Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Progressive Democrats of Howard County podcast. This is episode 4 now. Very excited to be coming back with another show, retouching on a topic that we already explored a little bit in our second episode, and that is about the Erickson proposed senior community in Western Howard County. But before we get into that and introduce our guests, I am one of your co-hosts, Jake Burdett, joined with me, as always, my other co-host, Hiruy. How are you doing today, Hiruy?
Hi, Jake, and hi to our guests. Thanks for joining us today. Like Jake mentioned, this is a very important podcast, very important topic. That brings together a lot of the issues of accountability, a lot of the terrible decisions that have taken place in the county on zoning and land use, and so it's good to be with you all, Jake.
Yeah, thank you, Hiruy. And we have a packed show tonight. It's our busiest episode yet. We got 4 guests, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves one by one. The reason that we're bringing these people on is because they all are active members of the community and testified in opposition to the Erickson project proposal a couple weeks or maybe a month or so ago at a zoning board meeting, and they all very knowledgeable in different aspects of the project. So we wanted to bring them all on to sort of explain that. So I'm going to have each person introduce themselves, and tell who they are, what their background is, and what specifically they testified on. Though don't get into the details just yet, because we're going to dig into that a little bit more. But I guess we will go. Ginny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you. Hi, my name is Virginia, or Ginny Thomas. I'm a longtime resident of Howard County, and I've worked both professionally and as a volunteer for most of my life, working with individuals who need long-term care services, such as seniors and individuals with disabilities and caregivers and people that need respite care. I will be covering the need, or actually why there is a lack of a need for the project, and also what are some of the problems where this project would be actually detrimental to the senior population and to the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginny. And next we'll go to Alan. You want to introduce yourself?
My name is Alan Schneider. I've been an attorney in other jurisdictions. I'm not an attorney in Maryland, but what I'm doing is basically trying to facilitate and to help other people's voices be heard in various aspects as they relate to land use decisions in Howard County and the things that the elected officials need to be concerned about, because there have been major concerns about the voices not being heard and about there being no compliance, no enforcement, and no protection of our environment. So there are many different issues that need to be addressed in every decision. And this Erickson proposal is one good example.
Thank you, Alan. And next we'll go to Dave. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Got the button. Okay, yeah, my name is Dave Elsesser, and I'm going to talk on the topic of sort of traffic. And so what I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm actually a physicist. I have a PhD in physics. But I live in the community, and I've seen the traffic and caused by 108 and the excessive traffic already. And so really what I testified about during the hearing is how, the Erickson's proposal for the road changes will make our traffic much worse. It will be good for them and the other developer, but it will make our traffic much worse and make it more dangerous for the community.
Thank you, Dave. And last but not least, want to go to Fred.
Hi, I'm Fred Tutman. I've been the Riverkeeper. My title professionally is Patuxent Riverkeeper for the last 18 years. It means that I'm a water quality advocate. And as far as I know, the organization I work for, Patuxent Riverkeeper, is the only private nonprofit organization that looks at the health of the Patuxent River in its entirety. And so we work all the way from Howard County in the north, near where the headwaters of the Patuxent go, through the braided portions of the middle and the little Patuxent, all the way to where the Patuxent River meets the Chesapeake Bay, down in St. Mary's County and in Solomons. And I did testify about concerns I have, not only about growth generally, but growth very specifically at this site that has a number of sensitive features, which we'll get into as we go forward.
Yes, thank you, Fred. So before we really dig into the meat and bones here of, the specifics of what everybody testified on, I do just want to reiterate the reason why we are deciding to revisit this topic of the Erickson development project, even though we've already done kind of a looser episode in podcast 2 on it. And that is like literally within like 15 minutes of us posting that podcast episode where we were critical of the Erickson project. And it was over a 50-minute long podcast episode, but within 15 minutes of us posting it online, suddenly our Progressive Democrats of Howard County account got added to some mysterious NIMBY list on Twitter, which is, NIMBYs are a thing, but it's also a smear used by developers and their sympathizers to, misrepresent people that are critical of a development project, paint them as, racist, classist, and of course those people do exist, but that very clearly was not where our objections were stemming from. So within 15 minutes of that 50-minute episode being posted, we get added to that NIMBY list by some mysterious account. We blocked it and then unblocked it to get off the list. And then suddenly, within like 30 minutes of it being posted, that Twitter account, who did not live in Howard County, was not, and no connection to Howard County, is posting marked up maps of the specific parcel in question where the development project would be. And, our question is, where are they getting these marked up maps on such short notice, especially when they seemingly have no ties to the community? And we were suspecting maybe somebody was giving this person information, if this was even a real person in the first place. And what would you believe, but a couple hours later, they posted a full-length, blog smearing us, mischaracterizing our arguments, really just doing PR for the development project and for Erickson. And it makes you question whether this came from, somebody attached with the project, or definitely at least with somebody in the development community. Some weird account, Miho Solopek. And then lo and behold, we did some digging into who this mysterious Miho person was. And their second most recent follower was infamous development attorney in Howard County, Tom Cole. So we don't have proof that this came from them, but there's definitely a lot of telltale signs. So a lot of easily debunkable things in there that we're probably going to reference throughout this episode and ask some of our guests maybe to verify some of the claims. But so that is why we are doing this again, because we did the first episode and clearly it made an impact enough for them to feel that they needed to retaliate and debunk a little bit. So Hiruy, I don't know if you had any comments on that or if we want to go to questions.
Yeah, Jake, I think that's a very, the points made in that blog post are going to be important to debunk. In addition to that, the zoning board will be doing some deliberations on the case next month. And given some of the issues in terms of the due process issues that the community has faced, I don't have a lot of confidence that the community's input in the zoning board proceedings will be given enough weight. And so an additional purpose to this is to also bring awareness to some of these issues, so that the broader community is aware of the issues going forward, and so it's to address some of the myths that were introduced, the mischaracterizations, the distorted arguments that were being made in that blog post, which is possibly either it's either the developer or someone associated with the developer, and also in terms of anticipating the deliberations by the zoning board. Jake?
Yeah, so without any further ado, I think we will launch into the specific questions that we have for some of our guests here. And I guess I want to start just by unpacking the basics, because I think it's easy for us to forget how little the average community member knows about zoning and land use issues. But basically what the developer is trying to do to get the retirement community built is that piece of land needs to be rezoned into something called a community enhancement floating zone, a CEF zone. Either Alan or Ginny, whoever wants to take it, could you please explain what a CEF zone is and what are why Erickson needs to get that permit, and why they maybe shouldn't, maybe why they don't meet the criteria for that?
One of the issues is the extension of the PSA. There's a planned service area. The PSA is really not supposed to be expanded unless there is a comprehensive analysis of why the metropolitan boundary should be expanded. And that was not done. It was done just kind of as an afterthought by the last county council to enable a community, a CCRC, a community retirement community that Jenny will talk about. But then it expanded beyond that. So there are a lot of questions about how this happened and the procedures that were avoided or ignored, or community input was not given full consideration. And that is continuing. And that is one of the concerns that we have going forward, not only in this development, but in others. So it gets back to an improper expansion of the PSA. It's supposed to end in October, and it was extended for another year, and that's another problem. So that's one. The community, the CEF, Community Enhancement Floating Zone, has a lot of problems because an enhancement is not a defined criteria. It's basically something that is undefined, and an enhancement is whatever the developers consider there to be an enhancement. There is no definition of what an enhancement is, and the enhancements with regard to this particular one, this particular development, really do not fit the qualifications among many other criteria that have not been adequately expressed to justify this community enhancement floating zone. But Jenny has a lot more things to say about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just add to what Alan's talking about. When I was on the zoning board a long time ago, it was very simple. The county, through a real public process, had to declare this land being X use, et cetera. And if a developer wanted to change it, one, you knew who the developer was, and two, they had approved change or mistake, change in the neighborhood, or the zoning board had made a mistake at that time, and therefore you needed to change it to something else. This floating zone is problematic in many ways. The other thing that bothers me is, again, as I said, in the past, you knew who the developer was. I asked many times, as did others, is Erickson the developer? Who? And I could never get an answer. Erickson is a management firm, and they've got a good reputation as a management firm in long-term care. That's not important to this issue, quite frankly. The issue is zoning. So I asked who are the investors, the guys that are really going to make the big bucks with this investment. And I was told by their attorney, it's none of my business, or it's none of any of. Why do we want to know about that? We want to know because the taxpayers have a right to know who they're dealing with. It's really very simple. These people are making promises by using Erickson as a spokesperson, telling you they're going to do parkland, they're going to do dog parks, they're going to do things, but they never have shown the real plans as to exactly what it'll look like so that the zoning board would approve exactly what you're getting. It's a bait and switch thing, and I think it's deplorable. So I guess the issue is you don't know who you're dealing with. Now, the good news for the investors is they've gone from rural zoning, which is very little development, to the potential for 1,440 units. Well, if the CCRC doesn't work, and we'll talk about that later, why I think it's got real problems, but if it doesn't, the good news for Clarksville is they get 1,440 potential rental apartments, and the affordable housing will fit in. So the county will get more affordable housing, and you'll get 1,440 apartments in an area where you need maybe more rental apartments for Clarksville. So I think the people need to pay attention to who are you dealing with, and can you trust them? And is this regulation enforceable? And the way it's set up, no, it is not. And the zoning board is, if they don't put a lot of very tight criteria on this, we could be taken for a ride. Thank you.
So let me ask a follow-up question on that, because so there were a couple of issues here. So one is the CF zoning criteria, and the other is the owners behind this project. So the questions behind the question of the owners behind the project. When we look at the CF criteria, the current zoning category of the parcel is, I believe it allows for 8 or so units to be built in the land as it is. So the developer proposes to make certain enhancements per the CF criteria, the CF or the CF zoning requirement, and they're saying that they're claiming that the CF the enhancements that they're proposing are proportional to the project that they're proposing. So why is that a problem? Can someone, so Alan or Ginny, could you describe some of the issues with that?
Well, there are several issues with that. One is the CEF is supposed to enhance the underlying zone that is being imposed upon. The underlying zone is agricultural preserve. It's farming. How does 1,442 units on top of environmentally sensitive land really enhance the land value? It does not. It enriches investors. And that is not the underlying criteria, which is in the general plan of Howard County. So the general plan of Howard County is really being controverted by this concept that CEF has to be determined by criteria that are really not included in the best interest of the citizens of Howard County.
Just let me add to that. One example that shows you how ludicrous this whole thing is: a dog park. People have tried to get an idea: is this for small dogs, large dogs, exactly what size, etc. Well, just picture somebody walking their dog across 108 near Shepherd's Lane in order to allow it to use the dog park. Maybe you'll do that, or maybe you'll drive your dog over. I don't know. But more than likely, the residents of either the CCRC or the apartment complex, depending on how it turns out, will walk their dog. So the dog park may be a very good idea for the development, for the 1,440 unit development. That's just one example.
Well, the other example is the trails. They said they were going to build some trails that will facilitate the students going to their dwelling units. And most of the residences are on the other side of Route 108. So in order to use the trails, the students from the elementary school and the high school have to cross 108 not only once, but twice to use the trail. And that's a hazard. It's a safety hazard. So I think that that's another misnomer that this is an enhancement to the community. It's not.
And on
Can I throw in here that this project and projects just like it up and down this watershed are very opportunistic, and the environment is the last thing that the developers have taken into account. As Ginny's pointed out, there's very little transparency on this project. You, the citizens of Howard County, need to be really concerned about projects like this because the implications are vast. I mean, you have subject matter experts from several different lenses, but let's be clear, this particular project does have some real issues as far as how it will affect the quality of life for people near and around the site, the quality of life and the quality of water to the south, downriver, downstream, you know, the old proverbial downstream. You know, I know that Dave's going to talk to us about traffic, and there are all kinds of procedural and zoning and other stuff. And I know people get bored hearing procedural and zoning stuff. The real deal here is this is a problematic project that has a lot of different burrs and problems attached to it in terms of the livability of the county and the future of this watershed. I just want to kind of throw that out there to kind of redirect this, because I don't want people to get too caught in the weeds of the, you know, Howard County procedures and laws and zoning stuff. I just had to throw that in there.
Well, just to follow up on that, and that is another thing, like Jenny was saying, one of those things that the citizens are not supposed to know about is there a better place for this? Everybody thinks that, a retirement community would be a good thing for the aging population in Howard County. Well, that's great. But when we ask, well, isn't there a better place in Howard County rather than putting this in environmentally sensitive ground, which is leading to our drinking water? And oh no, that's excluded from consideration in this project, and that is totally wrong. Totally wrong.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing that out, Fred. Really recentering this because I think a lot of this stuff can go over people's heads sometimes, and it's very important. So we don't want people to lose interest. So to wrap up the community enhancement floating zone thing, though. So I guess by my understanding, a CEF zone is basically when you want to use land for a different purpose than it was originally zoned for. So you have to get approval for that, and you get approval by basically saying, hey, in exchange for rezoning the land, we're going to offer several projects which will benefit the community, essentially. So I wanted to kind of explain that, because I don't know if we did explain that to people who don't know. But to wrap that up, I'd be curious, what are, aside from the dog park and the trails, are there any other examples of things that the developer is offering to justify the CEF, other projects, and are there flaws in how they're being presented? Because I think, Ginny, listening to your testimony, you said a lot of the things that they're offering as amenities to justify the community enhancement, they're not necessarily going to be footing the bill for it. It's going to be the county that's footing the bill for it. So I wanted to raise that point, because that's one of the claims that was made in that blog smearing us, is that the project has no taxpayer grants or subsidies. But so Ginny or Alan, could you maybe talk on what some of the community enhancement stuff that they're offering, and whether that's, who's going to be paying for that stuff potentially?
Well, Jenny, I thought you were good at that. For example, the trail and the dog park, and they're also going to have a playground, among other things. In 2014, there was a fueling station task force report that said that these public facilities, a dog park and a playground, should never be located next to a gas station. So, it just fails good planning. And that's one of the problems in Howard County, is there is no vision, there is no good plan for where projects should be located. It seems to be that when somebody proposes a project on a particular piece of land, there's no consideration for how does it fit into the whole picture? Where does it fit into the big pictures? There's no consideration of the big picture prospect. So you need to think about all those little factors about what's the best location and does it fit into those considerations. And the developers are able to say, oh, we're going to put this in, but then they shift the responsibility for maintenance and continuation to the county. So then it falls into the county responsibility to pay for what the developer reaps the benefit from.
Yeah, and another one is moderate income housing, what's known as MIHUs, where the law clearly states for the zoning that they have to provide 10% of the units have to go to people that are income qualified. But they already on that one said, no, we can only do 8%. And they also did not include the health center, which is assisted living, memory care, and skilled level nursing. Well, anyone that goes into a CCRC may need at some point that health center, and they aren't even covering them under that to give them the help that they'll need. So the whole thing is in many ways a farce. It's not well thought out, and it's very sad of what's happening. And I hope the zoning board realizes that this is a big problem.
Well,
So I want to go back to Alan. So I want to go back to the MIHU, but before we do that, one of the enhancements that the developer is proposing is so-called traffic improvements, and which is a glaring flaw in the proposal. And I think, Dave, you gave a very compelling testimony with even going as far back as the planning board. I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, when you were presenting your
Right.
findings, your studies. And so can you describe some of the issues with the proposed traffic so-called enhancements?
So if you're familiar with the River Hill Commercial District, essentially from 32 eastward to Linden Lithicum Lane, where the Linden Lithicum Church is, there are 5 lanes, two going westbound and 2 going eastbound, and there's a center turn lane. So there's a continuous section of 5 lanes. But when you get to the area where this development is going to happen, there's a choke point where we drop down to 2 lanes in each direction. And whenever you have choke point on a road that holds 20,000 cars per day, 20,000 daily trips, you're going to get major traffic backups. So there's another choke point further up the road at Shepherd Lane. And as you know, Shepherd Lane comes in at like a very skewed angle, and it's dangerous, 55 degrees. And the recommendation is to have standard intersections. So the county studied this before in their planning. And they actually hired and paid like $150,000, $160,000 to Sabra Wang, an independent road consulting firm. And they recommended continuing that 5-section lane. If you're going to commercialize this area further to the west, you need to put this 5 sections of continuous road in up into the high school, River Hill High School. So every morning, due to this backup, due to these choke points, we have a backup to 32, and then we also have that at night when people come home. So we had this opportunity with this development, both on the other side, the River Hill Square, which is on the south side, which is a triangular property. We had an opportunity to really fix 108, and the state highway, which is in charge of 108, and the Howard County DPW and DPZ, since they're in charge of planning and development, and they are supposed to represent us, the citizens, should have been advocating for us And, you know, I went to them many times and said, look, the plan they have here is bad. So what the plan that they had is to realign Shepherd Lane further onto the farm, onto this land that they're proposing for the CEF, right? And why did they do that? They did that so that the River Hill Square, this triangular property, could have a signalized entrance. And what that forced is, with that signalized entrance there, because the right of way is not wide enough at that point, it forced that choke point to be permanent. And so we're stuck with that choke point and with traffic backups forever. Even worse now, they're going to put this this huge you know, retirement community in there, and they claim, oh, it won't draw that much traffic, but they're going to put this really essentially a mini city in, and traffic will be essentially much worse. So what they did was they moved that road where the Shepherd Lane, where they had the opportunity, the county in the past, as far as the planning, they had reserved a right of way on the east side so that they could have straightened Shepherd Lane out and made it perpendicular and a safe intersection. And that would have allowed 2 through lanes in each direction. So that would have served you know, the Howard County taxpayers much better. Instead, the county actually gave $1.3 million to the developer to move that road. And so that developer, just so we know that this plan is already in full swing, because the developer is the owner of the gas station. So the developer for the River Hill Square is the same as the developer for the gas station. So their plan is, okay, we'll move the gas station farther east, and we'll give you this area, this section of the farm where you can move the road to give yourself a signalized entrance. It's just all, you know, the point that is really bad here is that when you move this road, when the county accepted this right of way for the road and moved it, they were supposed to have a public hearing and allow the citizens to give input and propose different solutions, but they didn't. They hid it, and they violated county law, and they simply don't care. I mean, they violate the law at will. The road now is much more dangerous. It has excessive curvature, and they only improved the skewing angle from 55 degrees to like 65. So it's still, you know, a very dangerous intersection, even now more dangerous because it feels more open and people speed through it. And they cut off the left turn lane on the Shepherd turning onto 108. So the enhancement, the negative enhancement from that, from what they're doing to the roads far outweighs any positive enhancements from a dog park or playground that, you know, people, only a very few number of people will go to. So that's my my problems with the road, is that we're going to see even worse. I predict here in the fall, when traffic gets back into full swing, we're going to see even bigger backlogs.
Okay, so just to summarize what you just mentioned, Dave. So first, the developer across the street has received some money from the county to fix the roads, the existing condition of the roads, and then on top of that, if this project goes through, we will be looking at additional changes that would be required, additional road changes that will be required to reduce or to mitigate the impact from this project, and even though it's being proffered as an enhancement to the county, what they're providing right now would barely meet the existing traffic conditions before the new project. And once the project comes in, that will exacerbate the issue and will lead to additional taxpayer dollars to fix the conditions.
Well, it will, after this, it will be very difficult. If they build their plan as they have proposed, and, you know, I proposed in my testimony, I proposed just simply widening the road onto their property further. But what their answer was during that was, no, this is what we proposed. This is what we're going to do. We can't go back and, you know, and entertain the interests of the community at this point and the taxpayers. You know, this is what we propose and this is what it is. Vote it, you know, up or down. So whatever they come up with, we're going to be stuck with. And especially for westbound or eastbound Maryland 108 going from 32 towards River Hill High School, it's going to get a lot worse, because basically you have a left-bound lane and one through lane, and that left-bound lane, it's the whole extent of the property. So it's 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet or so, and people are going to be in that lane, and they're going to have to try and cut over to the right. And under heavy traffic conditions, they're just going to block that one through lane. So it's where you really need to fix choke points in traffic where you have a chance. And that would have allowed, you know, a lot better throughput on 108 had they fixed that.
Yeah, and Dave, if my understanding is correct, they had relied on some sort of traffic study to, like, you know, bolster their point that this would reduce traffic. But I think it was a potentially flawed study. Were you or other people in the county allowed to, you know, question those who performed the study about the methodology?
Well, you know, if you know what they showed a video of cars, you know, in part of the model is they show a video of cars going through the intersection, some cars turning, but, you know, a model is only so good. It doesn't really model the way people really drive, and where people try and sort of run ahead to cut other people off. And so that's kind of the problem, number one. Number two, I showed from their actual traffic study, their data, using their data, that that the eastbound traffic in all cases, both in the morning rush hour and the evening rush hour, was much higher, and it was projected to be much higher in the future. But they only had one through lane. They continued with this one through lane to the east, but they also proposed an extra through lane to the west, a new through lane. So, but there's no traffic jams to the west. So they're essentially, they're improving the roads for their benefit and not for the benefit of the community. And that's sort of, you know, what I tried to point out in the hearing.
So in summary, Dave, a model is as good as what you input into it. So, you know, it's garbage in, garbage out, and which is essentially what, you know, it was.
You know, the other general problem with these traffic studies is that like the county, it's just a requirement. So the developer goes out and hires their own traffic consulting firm. And they know what results you know, they know who is paying them. So in my opinion, the whole thing is entirely unethical. What should really happen is when you have a traffic study, you should give the county, you know, a pot of money, and they independently hire someone, so that, you know, really the taxpayers and the county is the customer of that, you know, not someone who is just wants the right answer. it's just unethical.
Yeah, I agree. And to point out a couple of other issues with the proceedings, before we go to the environmental impacts, because Fred, I think you gave a very compelling testimony. So before we go to that though, Dave, you mentioned some issues with. Actually, Jake asked the question about who was questioned on the traffic study, and Ginny also mentioned that in terms of the MIHU provisions that were discussed, and I have a couple of points to and just ask to ask Alan. This is the due process issue. So if the traffic study was reviewed by the county, and the developer mentioned that MIHU provisions were also reviewed by the county. Can you describe what happened related to those issues in terms of the community's challenges in trying to get answers on the reviewers of these proposals from the county side? Alan.
You're on mute, Alan.
Dave knows about this too, but the traffic study that was really done was did not apply to this particular development, did not really factor in all of the elements with regard to traffic congestion. So the traffic congestion was really a joke in this one and also the other ones too. So that the traffic is the traffic study is something that is not done to really support what is needed for the traffic growth in the future. What you're looking at is really where is the growth going to happen, and one of the things that is missing is taking into consideration comprehensive zoning, which is going on at the same time. There should not be this kind of development at this time without considering all kinds of the development in Howard County going forward into the future. And that should be taken into consideration in comprehensive zoning and not this kind of one-off. It's like spot zoning, which is also illegal.
So my follow-up, I guess my question was, how did, which those are good points, Alan. My question was, how did the county, and specifically the county executive, preventing the community from questioning the county entities who reviewed the proposal impact the community's ability to get answers?
In this particular position, the technical staff report by the Department of Planning and Zoning contained numerous questions that the zoning board wanted more answers to, and the county executive precluded those other department heads who look at that planning. One of them is Water and Sewer, Department of Public Utilities. Another is Department of Housing. Another is Department of Recs and Parks. Were not permitted to testify to the zoning board to have more information so that the zoning board could make a comprehensive decision about whether or not this development should be permitted. So there are a lot of missing facts in this whole procedure. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's typically never a good sign when they're not being very forthcoming with data or methodology or details of a study. And regarding what Dave said earlier about it, sometimes it's the developers that fund these studies themselves. I mean, that's a huge conflict of interest, just for the same reason that any Democrat would immediately discard any study that showed that, you know, burning fossil fuels don't contribute to climate change, and then you find out, oh, look at that study was funded by big fossil fuel. You know, it's very much a similar sort of science for hire, conflict of interest at play there. So thank you, you know, Dave and Alan, for you know, going into that. But you know, we touched on traffic, we touched on the zoning aspects, all sort of very nuanced, technical, wonky things, but you know, we saved hopefully the most pressing for last. Hopefully a lot of people can wrap their heads around this one, and that is the potential environmental dangers of building this project here. I'm glad we have, you know, a riverkeeper who has worked all around the state to talk to us about this. But you know, regarding that, the smear blog about us and defending the project, even in their picture defending the project, you can see that it's clearly right next to an agricultural preservation, right by Limestone Valley Farm. So, Fred, could you maybe talk to us about what are some of the environmental concerns of this project?
Well, sure. I mean, this is about location, 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 and then you've set the context. Let's look at the context for this particular site, okay? What's already there, all right? It's a site that has rolling hills, farms, it has ravines that basically the entire region drains to a part of the Patuxent River. Part of the Patuxent River there also has been shoved under into a culvert under the gas station that's already there. So there's already a cut. You know, you talk about death by 1,000 cuts. There's a major cut that the county already permitted that already occurred at this site that essentially puts the headwaters of one of the main streams that feed into the Patuxent River into a culvert under a gas station. We'll never get that back. We'll never get that natural resource value back. To add insult to injury, they now want to essentially pave pretty much the entire region around that, which means that the existing slopes and the sensitive lands, when I say sensitive lands, I mean lands in the area near a creek or a stream, lands that are freeable soil because they've been farmed and tilled for generations. Essentially, an important part of the, let's say, rural and open space heritage of this county that's on the block, essentially. And the stage was set, right, by putting the local water resource, you know, water is life, into a culvert pipe. So to add insult to injury, we're now essentially talking about urbanizing this area around the farming district or ag preserve area, which of course sets the stage for further degradation too of these other adjacent uses that are totally incompatible with the volume and the scope and the intensity of the development that's being proposed here. The front people, I can't say it's the developers, because as Ginny's pointed out, we don't know who the heck those people are, have vaguely hinted that there's some environmental review or analysis that will occur down the road or at some further point during the permitting. But of course, that, even if it were to occur, essentially occurs after the project has been largely approved, right? So it's kind of pro forma. Whatever you're going to do with the environment thereafter rests on top of all of these other cuts and burdens that they're proposing, and it's esoteric. I think they've also kind of in a vague way suggested that the county has an incredibly good track record with environmental practices, and therefore, I guess we should look the other way. I mean, that's kind of nuts. I mean, look, let's be clear. The Chesapeake Bay and this river, Patuxent River, has a D- water quality score, first and foremost. In 40 years, I've never seen the Chesapeake Bay movement clean up a single tributary anywhere in the Chesapeake Bay. So whatever we're doing with environmental practices and protections is insufficient to protect regional water quality. I think the thing we have to heed here is that we have to really slow down the urbanization of the northern part of the Patuxent River, where virtually the entire river system is downstream from this growth problem that has existed, as far as I can tell, going back all the way back to like the 70s and 80s, right? It so happens that the geopolitics of the Patuxent is that the growth and urbanization is occurring in the north, okay? And the wild and woolly areas of the estuary are in the south. That's, the rural areas are in Calvert and St. Mary's and all these southern areas below Howard County. Getting the county to recognize its obligation to protect water, not only within its borders, but the entire river system that is downstream of it, is darn near impossible, generally because of its fixation on its own growth agenda. But basically, we're looking at something where we have some discretion. We could stop this. We don't have to do this. In fact, as far as I know, I mean, if you're talking in a big picture sense, we're building housing in the state at 30% beyond where the actual need is. We're really accommodating profits, not the ever expanding population, right? We don't do a lot of redevelopment in the state. And we don't do a lot of smart growth, actually. I had a conversation once with the Secretary of Planning in another administration where she argued that we're all smart people, and so we only do smart growth. I am not reassured. I am not reassured. And if you look at the dreary state of water quality, D- is a failure in anybody's book. It raises the bar in terms of what's going on near the headwaters. Howard County has a bigger and greater burden than any of these counties to the south of it, right? Because that's where the growth is originating. So, I mean, I can and will go on, but I mean, those are kind of the contextual things you need to look at in terms of this site. It's a very site-specific concern. It's not a boilerplate, we're anti-growth. We're actually anti-growth in some of the worst places to put growth. And this is one of the worst places in the county to put this particular type of growth.
And I'm glad you used that word urbanization, because that was specifically one of the things that we were criticized for in the blog, was describing it as being in rural Western Howard County. And they said that that was, not a fair description, because I guess there's, a high school nearby. But, again, it's right up against an agricultural preservation, right near a farm. And if this is not a rural area, or if this is already an urban area, then why do we need the public service area? Why isn't that infrastructure already there? I'd imagine it would be the county paying to extend that stuff. So it would be, basically a subsidy.
You raise a good point. I mean, let's be clear, in further context, they're being paid to say that. Nobody on this Zoom call is being paid to say what we're saying. We have every incentive as people who care about the resource, who care about the county, who care about the future of the watershed, to tell you exactly what's real. Anything those guys tell you is what they're being paid to say. And we don't even know who's paying them to say it, for goodness sakes, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Thank you for that, Fred. I don't know, Hiruy, if you had any follow-ups on the environmental stuff.
Just really quickly, Fred, if you can recall, because I do recall, there was a lot of attempts to prevent you from testifying by the attorney, and could you describe some of that? I mean, it's a very specific event, so I wouldn't be surprised if in a long list of events. So I wouldn't be surprised that, if you don't recall it.
Well, I don't actually know the particulars in this instance, but it is not unusual for advocates for development to argue that folks who have an opposing view shouldn't be allowed to testify. This particular group of players has tried very hard, I think, to sculpt the public record, to control it in such a way so that only favorable information is included. They've even managed to convince the planning board that they can't even hear certain testimony, or certain citizens, or certain information should be excluded. Oddly and ironically and quite dishonestly, they've essentially argued that we're only allowed to hear information that goes to the approval criteria. So it's really a stacked deck to begin with. The reality is the planning board and any of these public deliberative bodies have the right to hear any exposition, any information that helps them make a better decision, that they themselves get to decide whether information is relevant to the criteria they're considering. The applicant doesn't get to decide the ground rules around which you get to only approve their project. But I also believe the deeper rationale is that they also want to make it harder to appeal this decision later. And we only get to appeal these things, generally speaking, on the record that has already occurred. And so if you can keep all the information out of the record that essentially is not favorable or not complementary to the proposal, you eventually cut off the citizens at the knees who want to go forward and get an appellate review of this really, I'm trying very hard not to use the word crooked. Let's say badly not adequately controlled, that much of what has occurred in these public hearings is not within the bounds of an open or transparent process. And it only serves to undermine public confidence in these processes. It's really aimed also, I think, at discouraging citizens from testifying by antagonizing them, by dragging them out in front. I mean, no one's simply said, you know, do you still beat your wife? But I mean, it's that kind of forum. And these proceedings, and I think the county is marred and is marked by the honesty or dishonesty that occurs in its public decision-making. And this one's a doozy. This one is really a mess in terms of its transparency, in terms of the kind of exposition, the kind of role that citizens are being allowed to play, the way in which the applicant is actually controlling the testimony and cutting off the ability for us to get information on the table that would actually help the deliberating body take a 360-degree look at this project, to look at it on the basis of its actual merits, as opposed to the checkoff list that allows you to race towards the conclusion, the predetermined conclusion that you should approve this no matter what, right? And there's a spiral. You remember, and I've made this clear, we work in all 7 counties of the Patuxent, and some counties do this better or worse. And the quality, I think, of public deliberations has generally gone downhill. You know, they start these off generally by lecturing us about civility, as though we're savages and are going to behave badly. The truth is, we're citizens, we're taxpayers, we're voters, we're a lot of things, but we're not, you know, people and prone to fly off the handle and create incivility. But let's be clear, the context of this is to get what is best for the county, not necessarily what's best for the investors. And the ability to do that is really hampered and impaired by processes where you sculpted the information, discouraged people from testifying, told them what they can and cannot say, told the body that's deliberating what is and is not relevant in advance of them even having heard it. So you can tell I'm really mad about this stuff because I see a lot of it. It goes on in other places too, but you know, they've kind of perfected it in Howard County. And it's important because of, again, the context. This is close to where the headwaters are. Everything that happens here in this county has some impact on either the Patuxent, you know, or the Patapsco or other water bodies because of its geography, because of where it's situated. So I don't really know what they did to try and prevent me from testifying. They know who we are. We've been around for 18 years. We file lawsuits.
Fred,
Guess what? We occasionally win them, and which makes us not welcome at the party.
you may not have recollected exactly what they did, but what you described is exactly what they did to you, and in terms of how they sculpted the criteria and artificially created this criteria that and tried to prevent the environmental impact. So thanks for that. And I have a couple of questions for Ginny, but Jake, do you want to start, or if you have, or I can go.
I don't have a question, more just a comment. I think Fred hit the nail right on the head of, you know, it really is, you know, the foxes guarding the hen house here in Howard County, and I'm sure in other counties too. And that's why we talk about so much in our Progressive Democrats of Howard County group. The central problem here of campaign donations from these special interest groups like the development lobby, because then through there, the developers and other interest groups can control the elected officials who then get to appoint, you know, the heads of the different, you know, this and that zoning and planning board. And then it's just the industry regulating itself. And we know that never works. So just wanted to point that out, but Hiruy, go ahead with the questions.
Yeah, Ginny, one of the concerns, and in fact, I reviewed a major study that was performed for by Howard County pertaining to older adults, retirees, and this project was severely incongruent with that survey. Could you sort of describe, you know, the impacts, the adverse impacts that you raised, you know, to retirees, to seniors in Howard County? Ginny, you're muted.
Yes, Yes, okay, yes, I will, but I'll be brief about it because I know it's probably getting late in this session, but what upset me is the presenter for Erickson, I think in the first meeting, made a big deal of the 60+ tsunami population that was going to occur in Howard County, and therefore there's a need for the Erickson CCRC, or whoever's going to own that CCRC. That is misleading. People don't move into a CCRC until around, the average age nationally is 82 to 84. Okay, so that was unfair to mislead the zoning board with that data and that on that population. The second thing, in terms of facts, reality, is only 10% of the senior population even consider a continuing care retirement community. And of that population, we're talking about 82 to 84 in Howard County. And of that, you have to qualify financially, medically, and mentally, pass tests to make sure that you can move in. So that's even a smaller population. So the truth is, there's no way they are telling the truth by saying this is a project for Howard County. So Howard County will be spending money, et cetera, to help the developer, but it is not a Howard County only project. There is just no way. It will have to attract from all over the region and other states in order to even try to come close to that number. The second thing is reality of some of the studies you show, even the general plan 2030 in that Howard County did, shows clearly majority of seniors, 90% or so, want to remain in their own homes. What the county's been doing is correct in that it's been trying to strengthen that and help seniors remain in their own homes. It's also individuals with disabilities have a really strong desire to remain in their own homes. Caregivers need help. So they don't want anything to do with a CCRC. Then you have the 900+ existing people in the current 2 continuing care retirement communities in Howard County that could very well be very negatively impacted, and their families, because a CCRC requires about a 92% occupancy. So if you overbuild, it's a simple business concept. If you build more than you need and everybody has lower occupancy, they're all in trouble, all 3 projects. Why would you do that to the 900+ seniors that have invested a lot of money to be assured that their long-term care needs will be met in their, what they consider now their new home, independent living, assisted living, nursing, and memory care? Why would you do that to your existing residents and their families? That just, I just don't get it. Don't pretend this is a Howard County project. There is no way anybody in their right mind would reach that conclusion. The other thing, real brief, is what's the impact on the hospital? I don't know about you guys, but already we have people that are being sent to hospitals outside of Howard County because of occupancy concerns. So you're going to have close to 3,000 people at this facility, 2,000 something, a couple of hundred of residents, but you're also going to have workforce. When they have an emergency and it's something that requires EMTs to come, that's going to cost you. And they usually bring the fire truck. Sometimes the police cars come, but the hospital will be in trouble, and you'll be sending our current residents outside the county, which you are already doing. It'll just really make the situation worse. The workforce is an issue, whether you're staying at home for seniors and individuals with disabilities, or you are in a facility, and we've got lots and lots of assisted living, small group homes, nursing homes in Howard County that are already having problems getting staff. It is an issue nationwide. We're working on that. We being part of the collaborative with Maryland and DC. But 2030, it's going to be even more of a crisis. Well, it already is a crisis, trying to get staff to work in a CCRC or to work in long-term care, period. So people that are at home, when you need to hire that much staff to meet this facility in Howard County, you are going to impact on the people that are available to help seniors and individuals with disabilities who need that help, personal care help, etc., in the home. That is unconscionable to do that to them. All to support a developer, whomever that is, so that they make a profit. Instead of developing 8 homes, they get to develop 1,440. I think that the expense of the taxpayers, that is so, it's clear. And in terms of amenities, it's like, I don't know what you're getting because it keeps changing daily as who's going to pay for what and what is the it anyway. Nobody's quite clear on that. So I guess those are enough reasons why, how can you do this to our senior population, the environment, the traffic, but just the quality of life? How can you do that to our seniors and our people with disabilities? I don't get it. Why do you want to help a developer and an investor? Of course, as I say, it may not turn out this way because they may wind up with 1,440 apartments for Clarksville that'll be rental, and it'll help with the issue of affordable housing. And I'm sure Clarksville will be delighted to get something they've been fighting against for a long time, which is rental apartments. So I'm very frustrated for a lot of reasons. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ginny, and everybody, and just to put a bow on that, because you made the point really well in the testimony that I listened to earlier. There seems to not be sufficient demand for all of these retirement units that they're trying to build. So to fill all of them, if there's not the demand in Howard County, that would mean they would have to get senior citizens to move from either other parts of Maryland or even other parts of the country. So we're bringing in new senior age population, which will inevitably increase the amount of hospital visits because, seniors disproportionately have, medical issues, and we don't really know if the hospital is equipped for that. So there's all of these externalities of the project that the developer does not seem to be concerned about, and they don't really care what the spillover effects of the community might be. So thank you, all of you, for raising those, whether it's the issue of traffic, the issue of environment, or just the issue of the overburdening of our other infrastructure. So I think we're going to wrap it up here. I don't know if you had any closing thoughts, remarks about the topic.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If you want a rural West, you're not going to get this way. It's not going to happen this way, right?
Yeah, that it really. I'm glad somebody referred to it as a mini city, because I never thought of it like that. But there literally are cities with less than 1,400 people, which is the amount of units that they want to put. So.
Look, you're all over this watershed, and the pride and joy for years for Howard County has been the rural West. Buddy, here goes. If you let this go forward. Yeah.
Well, I want to echo what Jake mentioned, and just say thank you to everybody for coming on. I don't subscribe to this notion that this is about more development versus less development, because that's how usually the developer likes to frame it. We as a community will benefit from a responsibly managed development process. So to the extent that we want to increase taxpayer the budget, if it's done in a responsible way, any proposal could have that impact. So we're calling for a more responsible approach to a development, and this is a very good example of where lack of accountability, violations of various zoning laws, corporate subsidy. This is textbook definition of corporate welfare, and of course, a violation of, I think, the rule of law, because there were several instances where, simple due process, was not, observed and was not, preserved for the community members, and so, we, we hope that this project is reconsidered. We hope the zoning board votes against it, because clearly, there are a lot of glaring issues. So this is to say that, just saying thank you to all our guests, and thanks.
Yeah, thank you. As always, check out our social media accounts. Check out our website, hocoprogressives.com. Sign up for our email list. Zoning and land use is really what we're trying to cover here, and also teach people how it does relate to these other issues that a lot of people understand and care about, like environment, like education. So thank you all for exceeding our expectations. You had a lot of knowledge on this topic, and we will see everybody for episode 5. Take care. Bye.